All right, here we go. Welcome, everybody, to Rise Up, where we talk about responsibility, integrity, service, and empathy and action, and learn what's going on in the world and the difference that I can make. Today is just the guys, the dudes, me and Ricky. Hello, Ricky.
Mm,
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, this is a yes, good morning. We're gonna make today's episode especially masculine today, but not that there's any particular way a masculine operates apparently in the gender world. But let's go into it. We've got a nice article from Ricky talking about climate change. We've got a good news article about climate change, and we have a discussion after all that about climate change. Thanks, Ricky.
Yes.
We
As
just
a
we just talked
passenger.
about what we're going to talk
Yeah.
about. All right, let's get into it, Ricky. Looks like we got an article about how the fossil fuel production is dangerously out of sync with climate change targets. So basically, we're ignoring, uh, well, for the most part, our the climate. The Paris Agreement, and so yeah, tell us all about it, Ricky.
Yeah. Thank you. I think you pretty much explained it all right there. But uh, yeah, I think it's something I'm really passionate about. Something I've been reading a lot about and focusing a lot recently. And so yeah, when this article came up, when I was doing some research, and I found it really interesting, but also really alarming. Basically, TLDR, the article was explaining that there's this conference coming up on climate change this November, um, and this conference, the focus is going to be on next steps, as they usually are. And there was a report made in preparation for the conference to understand where we're at and the kind of direction we're going in and what we need to do to change, basically. What I found alarming and what the article explains is there's this huge gap. So you've got this. Actually, let me pull it up here. So you see that? So there's this huge gap. Yeah, between the kind of fossil fuel production that is being recommended, the 1.5 degrees, to bring it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And there's the projected level of fossil fuel production. So you can see that in the red, countries, plans, and projections. These are what, from the research that has been done, this is what they're planning on spending on fossil fuels. And, obviously, if we continue along this path, we're not going to be anywhere near where we need to be, to reach our goals. And we're talking about like very, very close to like the edge right now, right? We got to be really focused and really strong about these goals, because if we push the earth too much, it's just not going to take any more. So yeah, I found it quite alarming. I found it quite disturbing that despite all this talk you've been having about climate change and governments promising this and that, but the statistics, the research is showing that's not really the case. We're not really keeping up with these promises. This also goes back to when I was talking about the decade of action and how it's so important that we move out of these conferences and move out of these discussions and conversations and really talk about practical, sustainable like solutions that we can do now. So I wanted to look at actually one more image here. So again, you can see this is showing. So you got the down arrows, the gray dots, and then the up arrows. The gray dots means like no change. The up arrows means increased production, projected production, and down arrows mean this decrease predicted production. So you can see coal is kind of like it's doing decent. You got most countries at least like not continuing production. You got a lot of countries decreasing production. You got a few countries decreasing production. You got some countries increasing production. The problem comes with, as you can see, the oil and gas, which actually most countries are increasing production. Germany is one of the few that's not, but they should be lowering it.
Can you zoom in a
But
little bit more? It's like impossible to see, at least for me.
hold on, let
Is it
me
possible
see.
to zoom in? Like
Not from here,
okay.
but you can you see the arrows?
I
Are
can
those
see the arrow.
visible?
Yeah, I can definitely see the gray, the green, the red.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the most important part. If you
Okay.
guys can see that, that's great. Alice, the rest I can explain.
Yeah, I
But
hear you.
yeah,
Coal, oil. Mhm.
so uh, yeah, so this is a huge problem. You've got some of the biggest. These are G20 countries, right? These are some of the most wealthy countries in the world, increasing the production into some of the most harmful substances to our environment, fossil fuels. And so, I think there's no call to action in the article itself, but I think this is an opportunity to, yeah, really reflect on, what can we do? Personally, I was thinking about here in the States, what's going on in the States with, Congress and this bill that's supposed to be passing for um, climate action and increasing funds into renewable resources and decreasing fossil fuel funding. Um, but yeah, it's very alarming. I think there's an opportunity to really reflect on government's promises and the fact that you got to hold them up. We got to hold them accountable to know what they're promising. So yeah, that's basically the article. I don't know, Johan, if you have any comments.
Yeah, when I just see a blatant disregard for the climate, um, there's that's basically what's going on. Now, there's also an increase in population, and basically nothing's really changed,
Yeah.
and it's going to increase production as there's more of us, and our appetite for new technologies or whatever it just grows and grows. Um, so a part of me is like, we need to do better marketing, like be clear about the damage, but clear. It's like, and be real. Don't make it sound extreme. Like, just be clear about what the impact is, and then also, find incentives and. But again, these are all niceties that probably won't work either. I mean, honestly, it's like, this is why, and this is why I asked the question, if it was last week or the week before, what's going to come first, world peace or an international concerted effort against to fight back climate change? And I think world peace has to happen first, because if you live in a society where you only serve the interests of your country, in fact, that's the United Nations does, right? Everyone's represented. That's nice. But if you're still serving your own interest, then who cares if those islands go underwater, or who cares about somebody else? Because the impact of what you're doing doesn't really hurt you as much as it does other nations, where the water's rising a foot, and in America, yeah, that might mean the beaches are destroyed. Oh, wow, it's so bad. I mean, it is, and that's not great. But other other countries are going underwater, so that's, until we live in a world where we actually we care about that empathy is a higher value than profit. Until that happens, I'm sorry, like, we can work hard and talk about it, and it's not going to change. And so that's why at YSP we focus on peace, because it's ultimately the purpose of everything we do. And can we live in a world that's dramatically changing climate? Yeah, that's easy for me to say as living here. But yeah, not for someone else. So yeah, that's honestly, anyway, we're going to keep this discussion going. Thanks, Ricky.
Yep.
And I think it's kind of funny, well, not funny, but someone's preparing the report for this event, this conference, and it's like, guys, we are not, it's not looking good. And, everyone's kind of moving forward and doing our best. It's all nice.
Mm.
But yeah. Okay. Next article. So for good news, I got me an article here. I'm going to share my screen, see how this works. Okay. Okay, let's try this. All right, the article is Retired Banker Devotes His Millionaire Fortune to Restoring Protective Sand Dunes on Island Beaches. So a rich person, what's his name? By the name of, let's see, Mr. Robinson. What's his first name? Alan Robertson. He went to a beach and saw that, because of climate change, that these beaches would be destroyed. And so he invested how much millions? $15 million of his own money to restore it, which would involve, moving sand there, and he didn't just throw money at it. He really did invest into how to do it properly, and really took ownership over this project. So much so that he was considered to get some kind of award, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, I think it was like OSHA, no, NOAA. They said that they asked him to write a book on his best practices for beach restoration. While some experts have said he's 6 to 7 years ahead of his country. So I thought this was an interesting article. It shows just, if kind of, reflects our values, YSP, right? Rise, responsibility. That's definitely what's going on here. And it's a valiant effort, and hopefully an example to show that there is a reward in giving in this way. And yes, and at the same time, we all know this is 6 to 7 years from the future is not enough. I mean, we're going to eventually, in 20 years, it's just going to come back even worse. So there's a lot that one can do, but we do need to also look at policy. I know, Ricky, you're talking about different bills that are being drafted now to, hard to say radically change, but kind of move America in the direction of, more renewable energies sources, and just more responsible practices there. Looks like we lost Ricky. That's fun. Okay, so we're gonna. That's our fun. Good news today. We're gonna now go into our final talk and discussion. Without the discussion with anybody, we're gonna pull up. So what I want to talk about now is this past Synergy event that we had just on Saturday this weekend. And we had some very interesting presentations from our presenters. Also, our judges gave some very interesting feedback. So I'd like to just go through those presentations and have a bit of a discussion on, or at least commentary on those events. So let me share my screen. Or not. Okay, let's try this. Okay. Let me go. Share.
Oh,
Welcome back, Ricky. You were missed. All right, here we go. All right, so let's first start with our judges. Insa Park, chairman of the Pacific Rim Integrated Development Group. He's also an advisor for Women's Federation for World Peace International and their Giving for Good project, which is really popular this morning, which is the way they focus on climate change, especially around the fashion industry. This is Susan Golden, president of Susan Golden Education, which focuses on climate change and empowering our youth. And Dr. Dinshadada Chanji, research director for the Hyojung International Foundation for the Unity of the Sciences. He gave some pretty straight up hardcore feedback, which was very fun to watch. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one. This is from Unbi Che and Sumi Iwasaki. They talked about a tree planting project, which was pretty straightforward, encouraging tree planting and just the benefits of that, and kind of working together with the private sector and the nonprofit sector. And I think a kind of a focus to bring it together to get started was focusing on North Korea, which we happen to have some hope in supporting reunification. And so we heard about kind of collaborating with other organizations and getting things started, just raise awareness and raising funds for planting trees there. Deforestation is a big issue, and so I thought this was good. And the second presentation was from Kozan Morimoto, and he was focusing on nuclear energy. And what he found was that there's a lot of misconceptions about nuclear energy, and because of all the fears of the problem, what is like Chernobyl and Fukushima, that people were not so open to even looking into this as a viable alternative to coal, oil, and everything. So, so the idea is that if we can raise a campaign just to show, just to state the facts and just kind of address the misconceptions, and then we can begin to see this as a viable energy source. I think some of the drawbacks is that it's very expensive to set up, but once it's set up, it's quite much cheaper to maintain over time. So, and the last one is on the fashion industry. So this is Iris Vojtovic, and her idea is to neutralize the fashion industry, which creates a lot of waste. You can see here, this is just an infographic on the, even to produce one pair of jeans, the amount of how much resources is taken, from cotton, the water, and also, I'm sure, greenhouse gases that are put out there in the waste. And so what she wants to do is focus on and popularize more gender neutral fashion, kind of, increasing the demand across the genders can, reduce our need to create new fashion. You can, and, I kind of, at first I thought it might be a joke to say that it might be hard to look into my wife's wardrobe and find something to wear. But you know what? I looked in there and I'm like, I could probably wear some of this stuff if it was my size. So I think this is, it's very eye-opening to understand also the challenges of the gender inequalities when it comes to fashion, how there's a tendency for women to, have to, kind of keep up with the latest fashions more, and somehow they're able to wear men's clothes, but men can't wear women's clothes. So these gender inequalities was very eye-opening, and so there's many different SDGs that were addressed in her project. So I'm going to ask you, Ricky, what do you think is, let me unshare here. Okay. Among these three presentations, which ones are like the most interesting? Now, in case you didn't know, the winner was the tree planting with Unbi and Sunmi. And the second was Iris with the Unbound and the neutralizing the fashion industry. Number three was Kozan. But I don't know, among the three, which one kind of you want to discuss or feels interesting?
I think for me, definitely, the winner, The tree planting one was stood out to me. As you know, I've talked about a lot the importance of tree planting because recently you've been talking a lot about reducing fossil fuel because it increases the amount of CO2, and I feel like tree planting is kind of like a positive force against it. You know what I mean? Because like when we're planting more trees, we're reducing the CO2. So I feel like in some sense it's giving us like more agency, and I'm always like up for having more agency and like finding a solution and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. So good point. I mean, tree planting, and I think there was a survey done on which were the most popular forms of climate change reduction, and tree planting was by far the number one most popular among at least the survey those they surveyed. And yes, nothing better than just planting positive, as opposed to telling people to change their behavior and cut back, and a little more difficult. I also think she mentioned in her presentation that it's not a replacement, right? That tree planting does not replace the mitigation of the carbon emissions, right, Ricky? But it's something that they should work together, right? Towards we're having connectivity issues today.
Yes.
But that was my point, Ricky. Just tree planting is not a replacement for reducing carbon emissions, but they're both a necessity. They both need to happen.
Yeah.
But it is much easier to talk about planting trees.
Yeah, it's much easier. Again, I said before, it gives us some sort of agency, but like it's not just CO2 that we're removing from the atmosphere, but it provides like environment for other plants to grow and for animals, and yeah, it's not just the CO2. I think it provides like a lot to our environment.
I was reading about China, and they planted so many trees. I forget how many billion trees they planted, but I remember reading somewhere, or maybe it was a YouTube video, that they planted so many trees though that it actually blocked the winds from coming into the city, and created a lot of like humidity, and with all of their so it's I can appreciate the effort, and sometimes we have to there are confounding variables that we don't take into account, but I appreciate that effort. I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, and I think also, sorry, just add one more thing. When we're talking about tree planting, there's also like a lot of countries, like Haiti, for example. They cut down almost all the trees they had in their country, and because they were trying to make money, and they cut it down for coal and stuff like that. And the effects of that actually like stand to this day. Where like actually I had a friend who he was traveling to Haiti. He was from the Dominican Republic, and he traveled to Haiti. And just imagine it's the same island,
Right.
but Haiti was like 10 times hotter because of the lack of trees. It was I don't know the science specifically, but like I just feel like planting trees, like it's more. There's so many benefits to it, like that I feel like people don't talk about. I just always love this idea of like planting trees and like making that like kind of like the focus of conservation efforts and stuff like that.
Wow. I mean, I can imagine like you're walking onto like a burning hot asphalt parking lot as opposed to
Yeah,
chilling in the woods.
yeah, and he was even saying like, because in the DR, like you don't really have like, what's it called, like indoor kind of cooling. You just have like fans. Most people just use fans. And he was saying like it's so hot in Haiti, like the fans were blowing hot air at him. He had to turn off the fans.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
How about the humidity though? It's just as bad, huh?
I think humidity was pretty bad as well. The humidity was about the same. It's like the temperature was just so much higher.
Well, hey, there you go. Nuclear, I know we were talking about that a little bit. I think I do believe that nuclear is a viable option. I think if we're going to make any change, it's not one thing, not just solar, wind, or whatever. We have to look at many different options as appropriate. I like Kozan's approach to starting with the facts and seeing that there are misconceptions in the public about it. And yes, it is kind of scary sounding, nuclear. It sounds like a weapon of mass destruction. But we have it is a consistent energy source that is expensive to set up, but then easier to maintain, relatively speaking. So I think, and a lot of people, I think what even Dr. Dadachanji mentioned, someone he respects in the climate change research says, we should be talking about nuclear because, you just showed the charts, Ricky. There's been no change. We're just burning coal, oil, and gas just as much as we have been, and there's no sign that we're going to change unless we provide an energy source that can be consistent. In America, and we're in the top 10, if not the number one for the most. I think maybe we do have the most nuclear energy here, but of course we're much larger as well. But it's I think we should start with the facts and go from there. And because I can imagine a world where you have nuclear energy and then you have your EV, you have your EV car and you plug it in to charge and it's from nuclear energy. Then you have wind and solar where it makes sense, and then you go from there. But I think sometimes I feel like we've taken solar way too far an extreme, or wind way too extreme, where it actually has an adverse effect in the environment. So I think we need to look at these other options. That's what I say. Especially the ones that I think were less looked at, because there's like kind of this taboo around, these nuclear fallouts around the world. But what do you think, Ricky?
Yeah, I think as you said, renewable energy as an industry is incredibly new, and there's like new research coming out all the time on like ways to have like better renewable energy and all that. But I do feel like nuclear energy has kind of stood as a pretty good source for a long time. I think will continue to do so.
Exactly. And we talked about North Korea. I saw a study from Stanford University 2017 that kind of outlining a process to convert a nuclear weapons to nuclear energy. I'm like, wow, imagine that. Korea already is in the top 10 also for the most use of nuclear energy in the world. So it seems like a natural fit. But anyway, ideas, synergy projects. I think that's the answer. Just more synergy events. You can figure these things out. Yeah, and then Iris's project for, was it Unbound? That's her brand that she wants to start, raising awareness about gender neutral. I think there are some, fashion artists who kind of make their name for that. And hey, I would not mind wearing like what do they call it, a skirt or whatever that thing is. It looks really comfortable, to be honest with you. Like, I know back in the day, and she explained the whole history about men wearing these outfits. That if you ever play Legend of Zelda, he's got his tunic on with his tights or whatever. I'm like, you know what? I'm not sure with the tights, but yeah, definitely with the kilts. I guess in Scotland they still wear those. Yeah, I just wouldn't mind wearing that around the house.
Yeah, I mean, either. I just think I'd miss pockets too much.
You can get pockets.
Pockets are dress with pockets. Yeah.
You can wear like a utility belt on the inside. I don't know.
There you go, Miilhan. That's the solution.
Yeah, that's it. That's, you know what? All these problems just come from the fact that we can't figure out what to wear. Yeah. Okay. Everybody, thanks for joining us today on Rise Up. We will see you next week. Take care.
Right.